Hi everyone, Matt here, and welcome to Simply Strength. Today's video concerns simps, men who put women on a pedestal, roll out the red carpet, and worship them. These castrated, whipped, sorry excuses for men bend over backwards to satisfy their partner or spouse, but could actually be said to endure a worse time of things with relation to sex and a happy life in general. They think that their rewards will be higher, but in actuality they're reduced in the long run. These guys spend all of their money, time and resources on women, but are being played like fiddles. For example, I've had several married friends openly admit to me that their spouse flagrantly lies to them on a daily basis. They have little to no time, and with regards to sex, they probably get some once a month, if that. In this video, I'd like to point out some revealing features of simps, how to avoid them, and most importantly, how to avoid morphing into one yourself. I have a few examples of quintessential simpery from my own life, and the experiences of family and friends. In my previous video on jealousy and envy, I discussed briefly the band that I was involved in during my mid to late teens. I spoke about how it saved me at the time, sparing me the forlorn, empty existence afforded by chasing girls and really giving me something to invest my time and energy in. We would practice around a bandmate's farmhouse in the country. He had an awesome house with great acoustics, and we would stay there for one afternoon every fortnight or so to write songs and practice for eventual gigs. The bass player in the band started going out with a girl 2 years younger, and with honesty, I'd say that he was a 6 and she was a 4 to 5 out of 10, if that. It seemed like they spent every minute of every day with each other, holding hands without fail, and this went on for about 2 years. There were a number of instances where we would arrange a practice for the weekend, in good time, with plenty of notice, when and if we could get him on his own. Fortunately for us, he didn't bring her to practice, but there were times when he just wouldn't turn up, and make up some bullshit excuse. When we subsequently investigated where he'd actually been, by asking his other friends, it turned out that on most occasions he was either at her place or had gone out for the day with her. It obviously wasn't enough for him to spend all week with her at school. He had to give up his 3-hour band practice session as well. This is bearing in mind that I was putting in about 20 to 30 hours a week easily of practice, working on my playing, in addition to composing songs. This was my passion, and much more than a hobby, it consumed school and my life in general. In fact, we had numerous shows lined up at the time, and whilst they were some of the most enjoyable times of my life, we as a group knew that she came first in his mind. Fast forward to the present day and they split up many, many years ago. I don't know when, but it's complete and utter garbage. In a similar musical theme, we had a singer for a while that insisted on bringing his girlfriend and later wife down to practices, which was annoying at best. We used to rent out a little porter cabin at times in between using the farmhouse, and she would often come along. In between every song, we couldn't have a band discussion or chat about what we'd just been playing, because as soon as the last note was played, he'd be over to his girlfriend sat down watching us, either to make out or talk shit or whatever. It ate up so much time that I truly believe we spent more time talking than actually playing anything. For me, this was my passion, and it still is, albeit on a smaller scale these days because I have so many other strands to my life. I couldn't understand, though, and still don't, why these individuals saw fit to try and sabotage that. This is the reason you need to keep simps out of your life. They are castrated. They lack the balls to stand up to their partners and say, "No, I'm practicing with my band today, I'm working on writing a book, I'm going to the gym, I'm reading," etc., whatever their passion is. I've never understood throughout my life the thought process that makes one act this way, and perhaps someone can enlighten me. I was discussing this topic recently with my brother, and he revealed some prior knowledge of simps. A school friend he was reasonably close with over the years got a girlfriend a couple of years ago, his first I believe, and subsequently shut out everyone in his life. He used to hang out with my brother on a regular basis, weekly in fact, and they'd known each other pretty much their entire life. But as soon as his first girlfriend came into the picture, he dumped everyone off, not a word. He deleted all his old schoolmates off Facebook, unfollowed everyone on Twitter, and so on. Now, what man in their right mind would do that of his own accord? There was no evidence of a falling out at all, so it must have been her pulling the strings. Somewhat amusingly, to me at least, my brother confided to him that he wanted to get a dog and call it Rolo. After he broke off contact, my brother checked his Facebook and saw that they had called their dog Rolo. I mean, not only is he a simp, but he's a copycat also, it would seem. I think that the subservient existence associated with being a simp is brought about by insecurity, an innate fear of never being able to have a relationship with another woman, or being scared that sex will be taken away from you. Now, why would somebody be bothered about losing that, especially if your life has been without it previously? I know that they aren't completely comparable, but for me, the hours of enjoyment afforded by playing music live, along with the nerves and adrenaline that also brings, writing your own book, making videos on YouTube, reading about science and nature, publishing research, and so on and so forth, dwarf the cumulative enjoyment of however many 10-second orgasms. What kind of person sacrifices their own ambitions and passions for quite often the non-existent, unreciprocated gratitude of a woman? Perhaps the ultimate example of simpery that I can provide from my life is that of a former best friend. I discussed this in my MGTOW by default video and will expand a little further here. I'd known my friend since the first year of secondary school, so we were about 12, and lost contact at the age of about 22. This is a long time, and I mean it when I say he was one of my truly close friends. You could talk to him about anything. We used to hang out all the time during school, and for a long time thereafter. We shared the same classes for most things as well. Along with one other friend that I'm still very close to, fortunately, we were a tight-knit group. One day he claimed that a woman who worked in the dining room at work, he worked in a manufacturing plant and was probably about 20 at the time, this woman was going to set him up with her daughter. Okay, I thought, whatever. It turned out that she stood him up a few times before finally getting with him, and he reckoned that this was because of a bad prior relationship on her part. Anyway, I remember he brought her down to a pool hall we were hanging out at one evening, and she barely said a word to us, but seemed pleasant enough. About 2 months later, I drove down to a bowls club where he used to play every weekend. It was his sporting passion and he loved it to bits. Not my cup of tea, but I respected him for that. He confided in me that his girlfriend was pregnant and I couldn't believe it. He was almost laughing about it as well. I knew then that the clock was ticking on our friendship. There were too many warning signs. He fell out with his twin brother, who was obviously very close to previously, bearing in mind the bond shared often by twins. And we were also good friends with his brother as well. But his brother had had the balls to say to his face that she got pregnant deliberately. I know a lot of you MGTOWs out there will be nodding your head, but there was no way to prove such an assertion, as far as I'm aware. Fast forward a couple of months and they've got a wedding booked. A fucking wedding. I couldn't believe it. Apparently I heard that it was due to pressure from her father. Now, I'd like to think I'd have the balls to tell someone like that to fuck off, given the time frame of the relationship. But no, he gave in to every whim. And it was totally against the character that I thought he would have. Knowing him for 10 years, I thought he'd be able to stand up to that. I remember her being pregnant one time, obviously pregnant, and hanging out with us at a mutual friend's house. And for some unknown reason, she got pissed off and left, and got Daddy to pick her up. And then next minute, her dad rings my friend to complain about something she was pissed about. I just remember feeling really sorry for him at the time, because I knew he'd brought it on himself. With regards to the baby, she wasn't going to have an abortion due to being religious. Weird how they're religious when pregnant, but not when having sex before marriage. They started going to church every week when previously my friend had never been. This was obviously a requirement to get married in the church her family had picked, I guess. My friend ended up moving out of his parents' house and into her parents' place full time, which I didn't get at all. Just sitting here telling you this is pissing me off, and looking back, this was probably about 2010, 2011. They had the wedding, and I knew at the wedding that it was the last time that we would all be together as friends. Later, they moved out, my friend paid the deposit on a house, they moved in, and now they have 2 kids as far as I'm aware. He stopped speaking to any of us about a month after they moved. Once, they shopped at the supermarket where my other best friend worked at the time, and they ignored him. This, my friends, is what can happen to a man if he gives in to simpery. Complete, total, and utter destruction. I'm going to talk in a more abstract sense, now that I've covered a few gut-churning examples of simpery from my own life. Why, for instance, would you pay for your girlfriend or wife's breast enhancement? It's purely for validation from other men, to reaffirm to her that she's desirable. No doubt it'll be great for you in the short term, but what happens when she decides to leave you and take those nukes with her? It's like funding your enemy's weapon development. Why the hell would you do that? Why would you enable her to cheat on you, say, or seduce another man with breast implants that you paid for? Why would you fund a weapon for the enemy to use. Take this guy, and I've put a link in the description box to this article from the Mirror. Subway worker stole thousands from sandwich chain to pay for girlfriend's boob job. This guy, Scott Austin, started stealing cash. He stole thousands of pounds from his employers to pay for his girlfriend's boob job, dipping his hands into the till at the sandwich chain after he ran out of money to pay for electricity while his mum was away from home. When his girlfriend found out, she demanded he take more to fund cosmetic surgery, threatening to dump him and report him to police if he refused. Oh my. He stole up to $4,000 over a year before bosses noticed a downturn and discovered CCTV footage of him pocketing cash 8 times. Unbelievable. So that's just one example of simpery, as I like to call it. Another point is inspired by Mark Rudolph, who's one of my favourite people to watch on YouTube, with his inspirational speeches and ideas. His thoughts on reciprocity. So why should a guy pay for everything when women have a sense of entitlement? Or, you know, they will deprive sex off you if you don't pay for the meals or pay for the holidays or pay for this and that. And I'll include a link to the video I'm talking about. But I think he raises a great point. Separately, I recently saw a girl's about page on Facebook who was a friend of a friend, about 19 years old. She was probably a 7 out of 10. Under the work and education section, she'd written, "Nowhere, I'm a princess." Unbelievable. I know this veers away slightly from the video topic, but the sense of entitlement is overwhelming. I can see for a fact that whatever guy ends up with her is going to be genuine simp fodder. It really is in your best interest to avoid them, or if you've been infected by their presence, remove them from your life entirely. If not because they won't help themselves, but also because if you care about the simp in any way, it can be heartbreaking watching them get castrated and destroyed. Thus, you need to insulate yourself against this behaviour and be vigilant for the warning signs. Believe me, you don't want to end up this way. If you are well versed in the philosophy of MGTOW, you should be aware of how to do this. There are many superb videos from eloquent, knowledgeable creators that can provide advice and guidance. I'd really appreciate your comments, thoughts and perspective down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video useful and would like to help me continue to make the best videos possible. Please check out my Patreon page. Thank you and take care.